Hello everyone, my name is Greg and I dev stuff. Welcome to episode 6 of a Vampire Survivors-like game in Unity. Spawning enemies. So we have our enemies and attacking those enemies. Now we want to actually spawn the adversaries around the player. Create a new object to be used as a container called enemies. Select this object and add and create a new component called Enemies Manager. Open newly created script. This script will be responsible for managing spawning of the enemies. So today we will just sporadically spawn bots around the player, and later on in the tutorial we will be making those fancy waves or spawning enemies with those random behaviors, etc. Okay, create serialized field for the enemies we are going to spawn. Serialized field spawn area of type vector2 and spawn timer. In the update, tick down the timer, and if the timer is less than 0, call and create a new method called spawn enemy. Inside the spawn enemy we want to generate position based on spawn area. Then assign the new position to a newly instantiated enemy. In the editor, let's set up the fields. We need to specify prefab of the enemy, spawn area around the character, the higher this number, the further the enemy can spawn, and spawn timer. The lower the number, the faster they will spawn. Okay, we have a problem. Enemies are spawned, but they don't have a player as their target. which cause them to throw this error. Make the target destination public. Then in the enemy's manager assign to this value a player transform. Create field for the player transform and assign it in the editor. Actually, we need to set the game object of the player too, so let's make a new method called setTarget, which will set up the target game object and target destination. Hide the target destination field. Call setTarget in the enemy's manager. Pass the player object. Good. And now it works, but there is a problem. The spawning does not take the player position into account. So let's fix this, by just adding the position of the player to the enemy spawn position. This episode is brought to you by generous support of people on Patreon and members on YouTube. If you want to join them, link to my Patreon in the description and join button available right now on YouTube. If you join at $10 or more, you will get access to project files on Patreon. Good. Now if I launch the game, you might see that our enemies will occasionally spawn on the screen, which we want to avoid. To do this, we will randomly select one of the axes and use this axis to place the character on maximum distance on that axis. while randomizing where on the other axis it will spawn. This will spawn the enemies on square-like pattern around the player. Extract generation of random position into separate method. Good. Now we need to determine one of the sides to be used only on maximum value. Create an if statement where if the random value is more than 0.5f, then we will use y position as a max value. So put a random generation of x position here. And in else we will use x position as max, so put y position here. Then we need to determine is it positive or negative max side. Using this shortened if expression, we will generate either positive one or negative one. And using this value we will multiply the spawn area position, making it either max positive value or max negative value. So let's test this. Now let's stop our bots from moving and launch the game. They are placed outside of field of vision if you set up the spawn area correctly. We will see that our bots will be spawning exactly on the outer line of the spawn area in the square pattern, because they follow the max value of one of the side, but being randomly placed on other axis. Let's make the enemies object the parent of the spawned enemies to keep our editor hierarchy clean. Good, this is it for this episode. If you have any questions or any ideas about code, please leave your comment below. If you're interested in seeing what will come out of this, please subscribe. If you want to support further, you can find my Patreon in the description. Special thank you to Andrew V. Long and the Salt Hash Do for their generous support. With best regards, See you in the next episode.